Welcome to Divorce Law with Attorney David Badanes.
Hello and welcome to Divorce Law with experienced attorney David Badanes. David has extensive experience in divorce, child custody, child support, divorce mediation, and more. David personally handles each client with the attention that they deserve. I am your host, Kevin Rosenquist, and today's episode is an introduction to divorce in New York. David, great to see you.
Good seeing you, Kevin. Hope you're doing well.
I am, and I hope you are too. Ready to talk about sort of the intro to divorce in New York State. So do you need any reason or grounds to get divorced in New York?
No longer. That law has changed many years ago at this point. If you want a divorce, you just go to an attorney and they'll file the papers and you can get divorced. You don't have to present any type of grounds or reason.
Okay. Why did that change?
Well, that's a long story. We were the last state that actually required grounds, and it became almost a farce because people would have to, I don't want to use the word lie, but they would have to create stories because you had to say various things that may have not been 100% true. And more importantly, if the other spouse did not want to get divorced, they could really put a lot of roadblocks, and then it's costing people a lot more money than it should have. So that was the reason that New York finally woke up and say, wait a minute, why should we put all these roadblocks to getting divorced? It's just costing people more and more money. There's no reason for it.
That makes sense. So can you tell me what the difference between a contested and uncontested divorce is?
Well, I'm sure people have a little bit different definition, but I'll tell you my definition.
Okay.
An uncontested divorce means two people one person comes to me and says, look, I need a divorce, and it's uncontested, meaning we agree on everything. We agree on child custody, if they have children, child support. We agree on any assets, etc. We just need either an agreement to put that in legalese, so to speak, into a contract, or typically uncontested divorces where they have no children, they have very minimal assets, and they don't really even need an agreement, or an agreement that would be very small. And they agree to everything. They just don't know how to get from A to Z with the forms that are because there are forms on the New York State website, but I have people come to me and say, I tried these forms and I can't make them out. They're not so easy as people think they are. Right. So again, uncontested means no disagreements. They're coming in and both people want to get divorced. And contested means whether it's 1, 2, or 1 million issues that they don't agree upon, that to me is a contested divorce. So it's kind of like either true or false. You're either everything. Once you're not everything, then you're contested.
How often would you say they're uncontested?
True uncontested, because a lot of people, and I have, they say it's uncontested, but once I start asking questions, I could tell that it's really not. So I would say maybe 5 to 10%.
Yeah, I figured that was going to be a low number.
Maybe 15% at the top, and again, it's usually for people who are married for a short time. Again, no kids, no assets. Or the other end of the spectrum is they're married a long time, but the kids are grown. They may have assets, but they already know, well, we want to sell the house, split that, etc. They already know what they want, and they get.
How long does the divorce process usually take, and what factors influence the timeline?
Well, if it's uncontested, very quickly. Yeah. Because we filed, like I said, they agreed on everything. We file the paperwork. It's all electronic now, which is great. And depending on which county, because basically what happens is a clerk is looking over those documents, reviewing them, making sure they're correct, handing them to a judge. Judge kind of does a double take on it, whatever. So those can take anywhere from the time that you file those papers to actually judge signing them, 4 to 6 months. Clerks have a lot to do, maybe 3 months, but that's uncontested. Contested, typically from beginning to end, hitting a grand slam would be like a 1 year to 2 year process.
Oh, that's a long time.
Well, it used to be much worse. So a year to 2 years, sometimes longer, but there's a lot to do in a contested divorce in terms of getting financial information, working everything out. And that's how it has to happen.
Yeah. And if it's contested and the more stuff you have, or the more kids you have, or the more bitterness you have, or whatever, there's so many things that can make it hard.
It doesn't have to be a knock them out, drag them out fight. It just, and again, even a contested divorce, sometimes it can be a lot shorter than a year. If again, the people go to an attorneys, their respective attorneys, and the attorney can say, wait a minute, from our experience, we kind of know where we can go with this and come to an agreement much shorter. But every divorce is different. Every situation different. It's hard to give these very generalities But I don't like telling people, well, you're going to be divorced in 6 months, and then it's a year, and then they got mad at me.
Mhm.
I'd rather say a year and take 6 months and they're happy.
And then they're happy. Yeah, that's true. That's a good way to do it. That's a good way to do it. How is marital property divided in a New York divorce?
Well, if it's marital, depending what it is, but typically the rule of thumb is 50-50.
Okay.
You have a house, you sell it. If you sell it, everybody's getting 50%. But let's say you have a down payment that you can prove, then you're going to get that as a credit. But the other example I use is cars. Many people, let's say they have two cars, and one is worth, I don't know, making up 25,000, the other worth 27. Most judges are going to just say, you keep your car, you keep that car. We're not going to balance out a $2,000.
$2,000, yeah.
We may or may not, or may just come out of the wash, or even with personal property. Judges don't want to get involved in, well, you keep the couch and you keep this and you keep that. So it's not 100% 50-50 on some of these smaller items, but certainly big items are typically 50-50. Houses, retirement. And sure, if one car is worth 100,000 and the other one's 50, yes, there's going to be some type of, balancing act.
Yeah. What role does spousal maintenance, what you mentioned in an earlier episode, used to be called alimony, play in divorce proceedings, and how is spousal maintenance determined?
So similar to what child custody, now there is a formula for spousal maintenance. So we look at the income of each spouse, we throw it into this formula, and it tells whether alimony or maintenance is even in play. Judges do not have to follow that. It's certainly a guideline and certainly adhere to much more than it used to be. When it first came out in the law, people were a little bit more loose on it, but now it's become more of a, not much more of a, it's not as strict as child custody, but it's certainly not just a guideline. So judges tend to follow it more than they used to. So you really have to look at the income, but there's other factors like age, health, etc., that would guide whether there's going to be spousal maintenance.
We did an episode previously about child custody, but in case anyone listening didn't check that out yet, what determines child custody in New York?
Well, very briefly, because again, I know we only have so much time, but there's many factors that a judge would look to if a couple is going to go into a custody battle, so to speak. And that would be who's been the caretaker, the primary caretaker of the child, who can take care of the child going forward. Has there been what's called parental alienation, means one parent is basically talking bad or trying to alienate the other parent from the child? Has there been false allegations made against one of the parents? Those are the main factors, but other things like, educational, who can provide a better education for the child, finances, etc. So those are some of the factors that would look into.
You mentioned, was it parent alienation?
Right.
Is that talking bad about the other parent to the child or to anybody?
No, just to the child, pretty much. But again,
Okay.
if the child is in the next room and you're saying to your friend, oh, that, blah, 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 the kid's hearing it. So it doesn't have to be directly to the child, but if the child is hearing this bad, talking bad about the kid, and it's not just a bad mouthing the other parents. Also, alienation means keeping the child from the other parent without good reason.
Right. Yeah, it's right. You mentioned in our last episode that the mom had taken the kid for a month and didn't
Correct.
tthe dad. And
That's almost an extreme example, but
yeah,
it can be. I mean, I wouldn't say just one weekend, but again, if you're keeping the child from the other parent for no good reason, judges are not going to like that.
Yeah, that's not going to look good for you. What do you think parents should know about child support calculations in New York?
Well, there it's much more strict than spousal maintenance. Again, we're looking at people's income. There's formula that you can even look online, or an attorney can tell you what it is. And what people have to realize is, whether we like it or not, I don't make the laws. I'm not going to comment whether they're good, bad, or indifferent, but the judges are very strict about it. Once you put these numbers in, they view the support number as for the child, not for the other parent. Okay. Mm-hmm. So if you can't agree, that number is going to be the number pretty much. I mean, there are ways you can mitigate that. I don't want to give away all the attorney's secrets, but there are ways that you can, usually around the edges or other things. Also, if someone is either owns a corporation or is off the books, that's where it's a little bit less just putting numbers into a formula.
Okay.
So there's more to it than it sounds like, but you have to talk to an attorney.
Yeah, it sounds like, is the formula just sort of a baseline and then you have to kind of look at it a little more detailed?
Correct. I would say that's a good way of looking at it.
Okay. Cool. Thank you. You could use that. What happens to things like retirement assets and pensions?
Well, again, that's considered an asset, your retirement assets and pensions. So if whatever was earned during the marriage, so if you, let's just use a teacher. If they became a teacher after marriage, pretty much 50% of their pension, depending on a lot of things, would belong to the other spouse. If they were a teacher, let's say 5 to 10 years before getting married, those 5 to 10 years are excluded. But again, the baseline is all assets 50-50, but you have to, again, look under the hood, so to speak.
There's got to be so many nuances in every case that when someone comes to you.
Every case is, it's much more complicated than people think it is, and every case is different.
You pride yourself on being involved with every client. What's the first thing that you do what do you ask when someone sits down?
Well, I let them talk usually first, but then we go into typically income, then assets and debt. And also really the first thing I ask is, well, what is your goal here? What are you trying to accomplish? And they'll either say, well, I want to keep the house, I want custody, I want this, I want that. And I tell them and then we explore that further. But so I usually try to first find out what their goal or what they're trying to accomplish first, and then going through some of those other things again, assets, debts, etc.
How often do they come with a decent plan versus like kind of clueless as to what they should do?
Well, I wouldn't say a full blown out plan, but they certainly know I really want to keep the house. I want to keep the kids in the school district, or I want custody. So, they may not have all the details, but they certainly have an overview of what their goal or what they're trying to accomplish.
I've seen in movies a lot where people are
don't listen to movies or TV.
Divorce papers.
One of my first other piece of advice is forget about movies, forget about TV, forget about what you hear on what your friends and family, because it's all change and don't. Sorry. A lot of those movies and TV are made in California. Completely different law. Completely.
Oh, that's a good point. That's a good point. Yeah.
It's worse than apples and oranges. So
it's worse.
California's a community property state. They have so many different laws. It can't.
Yeah. I think it's interesting because I think that there's probably a lot of people out there who don't really understand how it works. I mean, why would you? Like most people wouldn't understand how it works until you actually if you have to go through it. So all you really have to reference is the people around you and the movies that you see.
Yeah, unfortunately, that is somewhat true. I think
it makes your job harder, doesn't it?
So much misinformation, and that's why having a video like this, or I have a lot of information on my website. But even that, it's like asking me to be an actor or an interviewer like you. It sounds easy, but I know it's not.
Yeah. Do a lot of people try to do it themselves before they come to see you?
I wouldn't say a lot of people. I'd say a small percentage. They realize that this is an important decision.
Yeah.
That is, again, if you have children or assets, you shouldn't really try to do this on your own. Again, if you have no children and no assets, if you can fill out the forms, go for it. But even then, I have people come to me, here are my forms, but I got rejected, and I have to almost start over because the forms are so badly done. And or other people have tried to do it themselves. They dig a 6-foot hole or whatever, and they expect me to fill that hole, so to speak. I always use the analogy, I can be a little handy, and I can try to fix my sink, but all of a sudden I'm going to have a foot of water in my basement. Let's just call the plumber.
Yeah, I'm so with you. So lastly, if anyone's listening and they're contemplating a divorce in New York, what advice would you give them right off the gate?
Well, again, of course, it's going to sound self-serving, but call an attorney.
Yeah.
Find an attorney that you're comfortable with. It's a lot about, there's going to be a lot of interaction. I can have a client who's comfortable with me. Let's say they have a twin, same exact facts. That person comes in, they just may not connect with me, or they may not connect with that other attorney.
Sure.
But they connect with me. I can't explain that. That's a connection thing or a personal feeling. They just have to feel it. There's a lot of, I will say there's a lot of very good attorneys, and there's reasons that they may choose A, B, or me. And I never take it personally if they interview 3 people and they choose someone else because maybe they just connected better.
Yeah.
I don't think that person's a better attorney. They just may connect better. Or again, I may be picked over that other attorney. So it's a lot of it has to do with connection. Of course, I think I'm a very good attorney. My goal is always, it sounds weird for an attorney, to actually save people time and money. I did go through a divorce a million years ago, so I know what the process is, and that was before I was an attorney. So I kind of get it. I understand the emotion, a lot of emotion in divorce. That's the advice I would give.
I think that's great advice. Well, thank you for joining us on Divorce Law with experienced attorney David Badanes. To connect with David, visit dbnylaw.com and be sure to like and subscribe our channel and leave a review if you found this helpful. David, so good to see you again. Thanks for being here.
Good seeing you again, Kevin. Have a good rest of the day.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.